the aftermath of the war didn't really affect me at all, because I was so determined to do other things. A lot of people, they never wanted to talk about the war. You didn't find people volunteering any information at all. They just wanted to forget it. The rationing, of course, extended for another, I don't know how many years, 7 or 8 years after the war. It was hard, you know, for some things. I suppose I was lucky in that my mother and father supplying things like sugar, because my father made his own cough syrup, so he had to have sugar to make the syrup, and I'm afraid a lot of that sugar went to the black market. I went back for 3 years at university, during which time, of course, Peter was born, and then came the aftermath. What do you do now? Get a job. And in those days, jobs for geologists were very few and far between. I had hoped that I would be able to go up the Persian Gulf to Iran on the oil fields there, but the Iranian oil company people were kicked out, so there was nothing there. I applied for all over the place, one in South Africa, and I eventually made 1 or 2 applications without any fruit, until I got the job with the coal board as a prospecting officer for open cast coal. So we went down, we got a house in Newcastle-under-Lyme. I only really meant to take the job as a stopgap until I could get one somewhere else. I applied to Canada. One of my sisters and her family had emigrated to Canada and were living in Ontario. So I had the plan of taking wife and son, going to Hamilton in Ontario, dumping them there, me go on by myself to Alberta, get myself a nice job and fix up some accommodation up, and then I could send. Unfortunately that fell through as well, because my sister decided that she didn't want to live in Canada anymore. I tried New Zealand, but was told that accommodation was very, very limited. So 10 years with the coal board, by which time we've got John and Elizabeth, and they decided that the Staffordshire open cast coal was finished and that we would have to get a job elsewhere, and I was offered one in South Wales, and I didn't want to go to South Wales. But I had a word or two with some friends, and someone who had been teaching said, "Why don't you go in for teaching, Franz? They'll accept you." So I thought it over. I thought, right, I will. Because I had no teaching experience, of course. Not that you needed it in those days. If you had a degree, you could be a teacher. I couldn't afford to train because I had a wife and family. So I applied for 1 or 2 jobs, and I got one from Bolton, you know, invited me to interview, and I liked the school and the staff so much that I accepted the first job that came along. I thought, you know, I've got to make a move. John was 10 and Liz was 8, 7, 8. And they were put in the village school in the same class, which to John was a signal to misbehave, I think. He became a bit of a nuisance, a very naughty boy. Max, little chubby bundle, as she grew up, she became invaluable when we started having other little grandchildren. She marshalled them, trained them. They really had a good time. Well, I was teaching there for just over 20 years. Happily, same school, until the reorganisation of education took place and it became a comprehensive school. Luckily, I managed to get out to a sixth form college and taught there for 2 years and then retired early. They gave me a lovely retirement party. As far as I could tell, I did a good job. Hope I did a good job. And I've still got friends in my old grammar school days, which, you know, when you teach with someone for 20 years, they have the same tastes as you. You get along very well with them, so I've still got 2 or 3 left, who are still alive.
I had Peter. I stayed at home with my, mother and father and Uncle Jeff, and it was quite good for Peter. People were so totally relieved, and because they had to keep on living in a decent way, if you'd lost your husband, sons or whatever, you kept going, and I think that helped a lot of people through that time of not allowing themselves to think too much about what had happened to them. I remember people grumbling a bit about the fact that we were still on food rations, you see, and the government really wanted to sort of keep it that way so that eventually it all sort of came together. And remember, we were up to our ears in debt. It was very austere, very austere. I remember very well that my brother, who had been away 6 years during the war, when he came home it was difficult for him to sort of get enough money together to move out of his in-laws, since his wife had relatives in America, in California. They were able to go there. Now imagine he'd been away 6 years, and I remember my mother crying quite a lot because he'd gone away again. There were opportunities there, and they went, and it was very sad. But I do remember people just getting on with things. You were not encouraged to be dramatic about it at all, and I think in many ways it helped people. I mean, a lot of women did work, but there would probably be grandmas, aunties, people around. There wasn't a lot of organisation where children could, be left and whatever. There wasn't a lot of that. But people did move about a fair bit, and like we did. Again, my mother was rather upset because we went away with taking little Peter, who settled down very well. He applied for a teaching post in Bolton, you see. Peter had a friend at school, and we met his parents, and his mother ran a little shop, and on the other side of Bolton, and she asked me if I'd like to work there, a few mornings a week, which I did for a short time. It was good because it was a new area that we moved into in the process of being built. So as people came in, or the people who had just moved in, we all sort of got together, and it made it really good. We did a lot of sewing and oh yes, I didn't really want to go out to work. Just quite content. I liked living there very much. They used to muck about with the machinery that the builders were using, and they could go up into the hills, but they all seemed to come back in one piece, so they were very good, and they were sent to their rooms if they were not. And I remember your dad shouting down once, "Has Mum calmed down yet?" You know, can I come down? Oh, it was lovely. We had a lot of fun. We bought a car. He got a car because he was paid. We could easily go back to Yorkshire, you see, and lots of places round about. And of course your granddad, he played rugby, and he got friendly with some of the team, and we made good friends there, and we went regularly to the church as well. It was very enjoyable, and then we decided to come here, to be near Mags and Martin and the children. And then when Pete and Zoe came up from London, that was good. But we used to love going down to London to stay in their flat, and we missed those trips. We went to California, to Oakland to stay with my brother. How many years ago? I had my 65th birthday there. We stayed 2 months. We had the most wonderful time there. Absolutely lovely. I must mention how kind Peter was. He took us to Paris for a weekend. I always wanted to go to Paris. But your granddad didn't want to go abroad, really, because I don't think he really wanted to. And so we joined walking clubs. We had a wonderful time walking in the Lake District and wherever. We went up and down the country, Scotland. We've been very fortunate. But it seems to have gone too quickly, really.